Hello everyone, my name is Alex with the Sachem Public Library, and today we will be covering Part 2 of our Affinity Designer series. Part 2 here will be covering how we can create a document or work on existing text for our laser engraver. This will allow you to create various vector artwork and graphics to be sent directly to the laser engraver to be created. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a new document. What I recommend doing here is setting our document units to inches, and then we can create our width and height here. So the width for our engraver that we have at the library, the width can't exceed 18 inches, and the height can't exceed 12 inches. So I'm going to set that here. We're going to use the maximum size of our document. So I'm going to hit Create. All right, now that we've created our document, you can adjust your view. I'm going to turn off our grid. So this document here is the exact size of our engravable area. So what we can do now is we can start creating graphics depending on what we were looking to do. I'm going to turn on rulers so that way I can see a defined view of where everything is in our particular document. So now that I'm here, I can start creating graphics. So if I had a vector line, such as this, I can take a look at that curved vector line, and I can see that it's 0.2 point in stroke size. So if I had a 3-point line here, the engraver will engrave this line just as it appears here at that location from the top left corner of the engraver. So we can then fill this in with a different shade. The engraver can engrave color. What it does is it will convert whatever it's seeing into a grayscale, and then it will try to shade based on firing the laser at different powers to give a depth depending on the material you're working in. So if we were engraving into wood, the black line around the edge would engrave the darkest, and other colors that aren't black or closer to white will engrave lighter and lighter to give it a varying depth appearance. What we can also do here is we can tell the engraver to cut out text or cut out our shapes, and that's done by changing the point size on our stroke. Now if we wanted our engraver to be able to cut out from our engraving here, if we wanted the line here, the black line, to be cut out of the wood that we were working in, we can then click on stroke, and then we can set this to 0.1. 0.1 point will tell the engraver to cut that line. So we can have varying effects. We can either have some parts of our design cut out and some parts not cut out. You can do the same thing with text. So if we had some example text here, we can scale this text up. And then we can then adjust the stroke here. So right now this text has no stroke. So what would happen here is it would engrave the insides of the text just as it looks here and then leave it alone. If we wanted it to cut out, we can define some color of stroke at some size. 0.1 for cutting. So it doesn't matter what color your stroke line is. If it's meant for cutting at 0.1 points, it will ignore the color, it will just cut out the line. The fill still matters though, so depending on what you're looking to do, if you want it to be slightly lighter, you can choose a color that fits the shade that you're looking to create. So say we wanted to create a keychain that had our name on it that was cut out of wood. So we can use the rectangle tool here to define a rectangle of a given size. So we might want that rectangle to be, so we'll select our rectangle here to change its size, and then in the bottom right here you'll see the width and the height of this rectangle. The width in this case is going to be how long that keychain is. We might only want that keychain to be 2 inches. So we're going to change the width here to be 2, and the height we're going to want to be 1 inch. But in order to set both of them at the same time, you have to uncheck this link here, because if this chain is enabled, it's keeping the original scale of our shape, which we don't want. We want it to be that. It looks a little small, but remember the entire size of our document here is 18 inches. So if we scroll in, now we can start making adjustments. So now we can add other shapes into here. So if we wanted my name in here, so I'll type my name. Then I'm going to adjust the point size of my name so it fits within our name tag here. And then I can add other various shapes. So if I wanted to add a cog tool here, I can drag in a cog tool, and I can set this to be the same size, 0.25 by 0.25. And I'm going to make a copy of this. So now I should have 2 cogs, and then I can place the cogs wherever I might want them to go. And I'll center my name within this box, or as close as I can get to it. So now I have my name inside of this outer box with these 2 cogs here. Okay, so what I need to do now is I need to add a hole in here. That way I can actually use this as a keychain. So I'm going to drag out a hole, and this hole I want to be about 1/8 of an inch. And this will vary depending on what you're using as your keychain. And then you're going to want to place this pretty close to the edge of your material here. That way it'll be easier for you to get it onto the keychain itself. So right about there. So now, if I zoom back out, we have our basic shape here. And I want to make some other changes here. What I want to do is I want to fill in these cogs with a different color than my name. I don't want them to look the same. I want them to have a slightly different shade. So I'll make this cog red, and I'll make this cog a dark green. We'll make this one blue, and then we'll make my name black. So that way it engraves pretty dark. So say you wanted to have a multi-layer effect for one of your shapes. So say these cogs here, we can make some adjustments to the cogs to give it a layered effect. So what I can do is I can make these slightly smaller than what they are. So I'm going to make these 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. I'll do it for this one. I'll leave the other one alone. So now that I have my cogs set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the stroke here to be some size. So 1 point might be too big for this particular shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to be 1/2 of a point. All right, now that I have that stroke created, I'm going to click another add stroke. So this is going to add a secondary stroke. And we can set this color to red and have that be 1 point. And you can see it kind of overtook the other one. That's because it's on top here. If we move it below, it will place that stroke underneath the other one. So we can continue to make more strokes. So if I add another stroke and bring this one below the one we just created and make this one 1.5, and we set the color for it to be blue, or perhaps pink, we can create a 1.5 stroke here. So right now we have the black inner part, and then the pink, and then the red. And then we can shuffle these around as we see fit, and then we can add another stroke if we wanted to. So we could add a stroke, move this one down here. We'll make this one green and 2 point. So we'll go with a darker green like there. All right. Now if we zoom out, we have a very different looking, but still interesting looking cog, and we can scale this up too if we wanted it to be bigger. So we can make this 0.25 by 0.25, and it'll probably be easier to see the colors. There we go. So if we scale that up here, the colors are more evenly reflected now in the patterning for our strokes. And because we layered them the way that we did, we have the changing in colors as we went out from the outside all the way in. It will stack the strokes so that way all of the colors are still visible. If you were to move one of the larger strokes on top, it would hide all of the other ones. So you want to repeatedly keep increasing your stroke size as you place new layers below all of the previous strokes. So this will create a very interesting shaded pattern once it's engraved onto wood or a different material. So then once I'm happy with this, I can then prepare this for printing by exporting this as an SVG file. And this will allow us at the Sachem Public Library to then import your SVG file that you've created, and then we can easily run it on whatever material you provided, be it wood or glass or other things. If you are using cut lines, like we did here, we can't cut through glass, so that would need to be wood. Otherwise, we would change this to either be removed entirely or engraved. Okay, so again, to export, we're going to go to File, and we're going to click Export. And this will again give us the option to choose a number of different things. If you were working with vector graphics, I highly recommend sticking with SVG. If you have vector files in here, such as the text in here, vector text can be scaled to any size and maintain its original resolution. It does not become blurry. Pixel layers do become blurry as you scale them up because they're defined with individual pixels. That's depending on the pixel's color, that's how an image or text or any other pixel layer gets its appearance. So as you increase the size of a pixel layer, the edges can get more blurred and the overall image can look very distorted or much lower resolution than the original creation. Vector lines are mathematical points in space that are defined by the program, and it tells the computer where point A and point B are, and then it draws a line between those 2 points, and that line either has or has not a stroke, or depending on how the lines are connected, the inside is either filled with a color or not filled with a color, just as we demonstrated here. So because of the way that those vector lines work, scaling up a vector object simply increases the distance between those points, and the computer can still redraw those vector lines to point A and point B, which allows the resolution to be just as high as it was at 5 inches or 500 feet. So if you were working with vector lines and we might need to scale your image up or down, I would recommend keeping it in a vector line. So if you do your artwork on a 2 by 2 inch grid and then you want us to scale it up to 12 by 12, keep it a vector image. If you're working one-to-one and you had raster layers in here or pixel layers in here, those will still work just fine, but just be aware that if there does need to be scaling to fit your design requirements based on the material that you bring in, the resolution of the outputted image will look a little bit lower if we needed to increase the size of a raster or pixel layer. So again, to conclude, we're going to export this as an SVG. And then when you hit export, it will ask you where you want to put it. So we'll put that in documents. So this will be for laser engraver test. And we can hit save. And now we have our document completed that we can then send over to our laser engraver and have engraved onto wood. Great. So that concludes the second part of our Affinity Designer tutorial. I hope you all enjoyed. Have a great day.